And three, two, one.
All right, so today we're talking about best practices, kind of specifically to the resale document industry, because that's what we're doing. But this applies to, I guess, can apply anywhere. But anyway, resale document processing best practices. What do you think is the most important thing, Joe?
I'm just thinking that, you have to start from the very beginning. Why would you need a process? And it's probably because you're being regulated and you need to make sure all your I's are crossed and your T's are dotted. I'm sorry, your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. And you make sure you're doing everything right. You got to have a process. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
So you got to
So
know them.
state laws, right? So, we started in here in Nevada, where where we're located. Home is Nevada for all of you Nevadans out there.
Home
Uh,
base.
Home means Nevada. So, in Nevada, there's laws on the books, been laws on the books for a long time, and that's how this company got started, was to help management companies follow those laws. So you need to know your state laws, but is knowing them enough?
Well, you pulled over for speeding. You can't turn to the officer and go, I didn't know. So yeah, you pretty much have to follow your laws that are established for you. And look, a side note is if you are in a plan, a systematic plan like we have, you don't even worry about that. But if you're on your own, you probably should be very aware of the state laws because we change them automatically in our system. But you would have to, on your own, be very aware of the changes and change your process along
So
with it.
not to be argumentative, but I'm going to argue with you on that, and I'm not going to
Well,
say you said if you're with a system like us, and I'm going to say no. If you're with us, you don't have to worry about it. But our competitors, not so much. And I'm not picking on the competitors. I'm just going to speak for some examples of state laws that have been changed. There have been laws in California and Nevada specifically that were written because of the practices of our competitors. And one example of that is we have in here in Nevada, we have a state law that says you can only charge a maximum of $185 for a resale package. And what our competitors were doing, so all of our clients were right at that max level, 185, including our fees. And what our competitors were doing was they were saying to other management companies, even ours, trying to get their business, saying, "Hey, you're going to make more money with us. We're going to give you all the 185," and then they put their fees on top of that. So people were paying $213 after fees when it was regulated at 185. So I hate to argue with you, but I'm going to argue with you on that. And I'll say this: as a result of that, Nevada has, in the last legislative session, changed the law that says that neither can the association nor any party helping the association to distribute documents charge an amount more than 185.
so that sounds like a legislature that's very, the nerves are exposed, that there are things going on that people want to actually, I'll say regulate, but confine. There's verbiage in a law. It gets watered down. People
Yes.
interpret the law. So obviously we thought, hey, just add it on top. Then we talked about it and it's like, no, we have to keep with the law. And so it's like we talked to our clients, they understood. They talked to their clients and they said, no, we interpret it as added on top because they're regulating your fee, not ours. So why not they charge the same, charge 185, and then we just charge 185 on top because no
Yeah.
one's regulating us. So if you look at it from that unfair perspective, they really did need to curtail that and be
Yeah.
more clear because they watered it down as laws are usually watered down. And then
Right.
you got it, it's due to interpretation instead of.
Right. And that, the thing is this: if you're in a state that has a fee, a cap on the fees, do your research. Make sure that if you're using a service like ours, or if you're using one of our competitors, make sure that they're not charging more than can be charged. And the reason I say that is because it just leads to more legislation.
So charge appropriately for your marketplace. Is
Charge
that what you're
appropriately.
talking about?
Absolutely. And if you're in a marketplace that doesn't have a cap on fees, don't charge an exorbitant amount,
Do you
right?
think any new states that don't have laws on the books, do you think that their very first laws in any regulation of this part of the industry, the documents for HOAs, do you think that that's one of the first laws that they kind of put out there is to kind of cap it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In
Any
fact,
examples of that recently out
yeah.
there
In
in the
fact,
United States?
we have a client. We have a client in North Carolina that does business in North Carolina and South Carolina. And North Carolina, there's one regulation, which is a cap on a fee for the statement of assessments, and that's it. And in South Carolina, there's no laws. So our client, who also, by the way, is very active in the with CAI and their LAC committee and things like that in the legislation there in North Carolina, says, hey, man, we got to make sure that we're keeping our fees where they need to be because we don't want more regulation. He's specifically saying we don't want more regulation. And so absolutely, that's where it starts and then just keeps going from there. And we see that in all of the states that have laws. Let me say this: in most of the states that have laws, that's where it is. I can think of one state that has laws that doesn't cap fees, but most of them do.
But it usually would start with that because that's where most of the complaints go. If they have an ombudsman or they have
Absolutely.
a division, a real estate division, usually that's governing any management companies in a way. I would say any states that don't have laws on the books will, in the next 5 to 10 years, have something on the books.
Yeah.
It's like the bigger states, kind of. I would say Texas, Florida,
Yep.
and not New York necessarily, but um, California,
Yeah. California, Texas, and Florida and Illinois are
Illinois.
the biggest.
They're
Yeah.
like the leaders of regulation. And so
Yeah.
therefore they're going to regulate anybody who cries or gets upset. Then they start, making themselves feel real important to make a law about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once they do that, the floodgates are open. North Carolina will fold into South Carolina in the next legislative session. They'll see that they'll feel their impact was really impactful in North Carolina. Therefore, North Carolina will pass a few more laws just to keep it all honest. And then South Carolina folds in. They all know what they're doing.
Let me just say this. I'm talking about that particular line in the map. I hope that it doesn't come down from Virginia because Virginia is one of
Strict.
one of the worst for us, and so I certainly hope it doesn't come from Virginia down into North Carolina and keep going south.
Now I'm going to differ with you, and we're going to end
Okay.
on this. It's not the worst for us. The more regulation, the
No.
more this industry needs a process. We're wrapping it right back up to kind of a process-oriented solution
Yeah.
where more regulation, the more you need something that keeps track of the regulations. I mean, it's not redundant for us, but it's redundant for every one of these people that have to go, oh, we need to change everything again, or whatever, every 2 years, or when they pass a
Yeah.
major law or change something that affects your business. So you want to expand on that, and then we
Yeah.
can say
No. So
adios.
what I was saying about Virginia is just the laws there are a little crazy, in my opinion. They're definitely the strictest in all of the states.
Even compared
Uh,
to Arizona, which I thought Arizona was pretty strict, right?
yeah. So let's say this. So the thing about laws is this, I've read all the state.
Unintended consequences.
I've read all the state laws, and let me tell you what, there are some. This is, wasn't the intent of this conversation, but we'll go there slightly. There are good laws. There are laws that are well written. There are laws that are bad laws that are well written. There are laws that are good laws that are poorly written. And so let's say this. Based on that, I would say number one, most strict would be Virginia. Number one, most difficult to work with would be Arizona. But we can do either one of those.
Is that because of like pay now or put things in queues? Things are it's very automated.
So I'll
Like
tell you what, the
it
biggest
makes it tough for a small company, in my opinion, in those two states. And
yeah.
as they see, they're really kind of stamping their worth, right? We got to make things stricter so they feel the pain of going outside the box. So these places, these two states have really clamped it down. Where a process like ours, almost hands down, you really need something like that.
Yeah. So you know what? I'll say this. Like in Nevada, the laws are very well written. They're very easy to understand, and they establish the entire process for the HOA resale industry. In Arizona, the laws that are written are there to make sure that it's regulated, but it doesn't set the process for the whole industry. So the biggest problem that we see in Arizona is that the title companies that are ordering the documents expect the management company to do all of the legwork. Whereas in other states, we see title companies that actually do their own legwork. They actually go and get their own uh, deeds, and they go and find out what's owed and if there's liens. So it's, I guess better written laws are ultimately better.
On that note, that sounds like a great segue to the end.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.